Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey guys, alright. Still got James with us. Still waking up a bit, but I got my coffee and everything. This is the last episode in the medieval history playlist at Epic History TV. Started with the Crusades, got into how to build the perfect castle. Great video last time, the 5 great Viking deaths, and now bonus Vikings interview, Ragnar's death song. Let's do it. If you're new to the channel, my name's Connor. Hello, I like to learn about history through YouTube recommendations. It's easier for me to interact with you over on the Discord, so make sure to click the link. The original link to this video will be at the top description below, top of the description. The Discord link will be right below that. Love for you to join. Pull up a chair. The more the merrier. Let's get into it. Where were bears, and did Vikings really believe in Valhalla? Alright, let's... Bonus Vikings interview, Ragnar's death song. Let's do it.
The story of Ragnar's death is, of course, told in his own saga, the Saga of Ragnar. But there's also a long poem which is supposed to have been sung by Ragnar from the snake pit.
Something about this guy right here, his voice, is just very calming to me. He's got a nice old guy, British accent.
Poem which is supposed to have been sung by Ragnar from the snake pit. And it's called Kraukumal, the Song of the Crow. And it's a death song, but it's also what they call an ivy singer. It's a song of life in which Ragnar recounts his battles and eventually looks forward to dying and going to feast on the benches of Odin, and of course predicting the revenge which will be taken for him. And the last line of it, which I adopted for my book title, is Hlæjandi skalek deyja, laughing shall I die. Os munu æsir bjóða, esat sitendi döði, lífs eru líðna stundir, hlæjandi skalek deyja. The gods will invite me in. In death there is no sighing. The hours of life have passed. Laughing shall I die. King Rolf's story, like King Arthur's, ends, of course, with a great battle in which Rolf is killed by someone who appears to have been his cousin, Hjörvarthr. Well, I said that sagas often have an element of fairy tale, and that's the case with the saga of Rolf Kraki, because his most famous champion is someone called Böðvar Bjarki. And Bjarki means little bear. And Bjarki is, in fact, a werebear. In the final battle, he takes bear shape, just like Beorn in Tolkien's The Hobbit, and starts fighting in the front rank as a bear, because he actually has 2 shapes. He's human and he's...
That's how I know this guy. That's how I know this guy's voice. I think he's in the appendices in the Lord of the Rings or something.
Because he actually has 2 shapes. He's human and he's bear, and he can project the bear shape. In the saga account, when the final battle takes place, Rolf's men realize that there is a gigantic bear fighting in their front ranks, which is tossing people around and knocking them down and crushing them with bear hugs and all sorts. But Böðvar isn't there. So his friend Hjalti goes back into the hall and says, and finds Böðvar sitting there in the hall on a bench. And he says, you know, come on, Böðvar, you're missing the battle. Böðvar Bjarki, he looks like fairy tale, but just the same, the giant halls at Hleithraborg, they're absolute fact. So once again, we have a mix of fact and fancy in the story.
Okay.
And you just have to try to separate the bits out.
I thought he said something else. Of the
famous thing about them is that they were deluded into getting involved with Norwegian politics, and their downfall was caused by the Viking custom of heitstrenging, in which you have to make a boast, usually when drunk, and when you make the boast, of course, once you're sober, you have to follow it up. And that's what they did. So they sailed off to help the conquest of Norway, and it was their bad luck to run into Jarl Håkon, with his supernatural goddess helper, his family goddess helper, Hladagerðr. and also his son, Jarl Erik, who was the greatest warrior of the Viking Age. So the Jomsvikings were very heavily defeated at the Battle of Hjörungavágr, which took place probably about 986. The story of the Battle of Stiklastaðir comes at the end of the saga of Olaf Sigurdsson, which was written by Snorri Sturluson sometime about 1230. The battle, however, took place on 29th July 1030, so we are now well into recorded history times. Thormod the poet survives. Not his fault, he just happens to survive. And at the end of the battle, when it's all over...
I love how he says, not his fault. As if it's like a shame if you survive a battle.
Not his fault, he just happens to survive. And at the end of the battle, when it's all over, he laments that he has not been allowed to join his king. And at that moment, an arrow comes flying from nowhere and hits him. Thormod goes off to the dressing station. Very interesting scene in the Viking dressing station, but it's clear that they can't do anything for him. So he starts to compose a final poem, which is about his own wound. And he goes through the poem in a very complex metrical stanza, and he dies on his feet without quite finishing it. The last line is...
This sort of reminds me of... isn't there this like scientist from like 100 years... I might be making this up, but... he like wants to record death, and so like he poisons himself and tries to like record his experience until he can do it no longer. It's off topic. This reminded me of it. It's kind of awesome how the guy realizes, oh, you're gonna die from that wound, and he just writes a poem about it.
And he dies on his feet without quite finishing it. The last line is incomplete. Emkark roser en rosum reiser grön kona manni. Jan stender fastet forna fenstigi mer benja. Dat welder mer en myra mar gloza nu troza. Dup ok danskra vapna dag...
Is English like the only language where the J has a j sound? It seems like every other language, the J is a h.
Gloza nu troza. Dup ok danskra vapna dag shrita spor. I am not red. Dag shrita spor.
Dead.
I am not red, yet the slim woman has a man unwounded. The ancient iron stands fast in my marsh of wounds. That makes me pale now, wearer of gold wave fire, the deep track at Dagfrid of Danish weapons. Fortunately, standing by is the teenage Harald Hardrada. And Harald was very keen on poetry and very skillful in skaldic meters. And he listens to the poem.
He's like waiting for him to die, and like as he kills over, like just gets the pen and paper and finishes.
And he's very skillful in skaldic meters. And he listens to the poem and he says what he was going to say was, and he finishes the poem for Thormod in exactly the right rhyme and meter. So the poem is finally completed, but Thormod has died standing on his feet. One of the nice things about Harald Hardrada, and in fact I think it's the only nice thing about Harald Hardrada, is that he was a genuine devotee of poetry. His whole saga has accounts of him favoring poets, criticizing poets, making his own poetry up, etc. I have to say also that he was a poetic snob. He very much preferred the difficult meters, which are almost impossible to compose and almost impossible to understand. But just the same, he was a patron of the arts, though you better not get your rhymes and half rhymes mixed up. He didn't like it if people did that. Everyone's familiar with the idea of Valhalla, and of course of the...
My idea is that it's just like another word for heaven, but that's all I know.
Valkyries.
Obviously, I could be very wrong.
Everyone's familiar with the idea of Valhalla, and of course of the Valkyries. If you are a warrior, like Kirk Douglas in the famous Vikings movie, and you die sword in hand, then your soul will be picked up by the Valkyries, the choosers of the slain, and you'll be taken off to Odin's halls. Valhüttel, the halls of the slain, where you will feast and frolic and fight with your companion warriors for the rest of eternity. Well, that's the story, and no doubt some Vikings believed it, and some no doubt did not, because that, I think, is a story particularly associated with the followers of Odin. And of course, there were others who were followers of Thor, or of Freyr, or of Heimdall, or of Njörður, or one of the many other gods in the Viking pantheon. So I'm sure there were many different ideas of what happened after you were dead. But that is the prominent one and the familiar one, and we find it written down by Snorri Sturluson. It's part of his digest, his little handbook of Norse mythology.
Awesome video. Yeah, that was really cool. Been learning a lot about Norse mythology and history. It's a nice cap on this series here, this playlist. All right, guys. I'll be back another video really soon. Go check out the Discord. Check out Epic History TV. Great channel, my favorite channel. Hope you guys are doing well. See you soon.